You remember when you were 7 years old watching Courage the Cowardly Dog and then all of a sudden this came on the screen? The horror, the bewilderment, the thought in your head saying, what is this? Each and every one of us have our own terrifying childhood memories. Whether it be a creepy animatronic from Chuck E. Cheese, a terrifying episode of a TV show that so happens to have a hyper-realistic image of one of our favorite cartoon characters, or something else that in retrospect wasn't that scary but for some reason really scared us as a child. These are my personal most terrifying childhood memories, and I would like to know some of yours in the comments section below as well. Okay, so before Five Nights at Freddy's, there was an actual thing called Chuck E. Cheese. You may have heard of it, and I know, it seems pretty surface level to start with animatronics, but I think everyone can relate of finding these things at least somewhat creepy at some point. I mean, there's a reason why Five Nights at Freddy's exists. Who the hell didn't look at the bear at Chuck E. Cheese and didn't think, oh my god, why does it look so stupid but terrifying at the same time? I remember my aunt taking me to Chuck E. Cheese when I was like 5, and all of a sudden I was greeted with this monstrosity staring right back at me with its vicious green eyes. It just didn't seem normal to me. I couldn't really comprehend it. The movements of each animatronic was just completely unnatural. You want to know some weird Chuck E. Cheese lore? Apparently Chuck E. Cheese is an orphan who hosts birthday parties for kids because he never had a birthday himself nor parents, and in a bit of tragedy is seeking to compensate for his lost childhood in order to feel something. This is real company lore. This is the actual story behind Chuck E. Cheese. Kind of crazy, right? I mean, that isn't creepy, more just sad. Throughout Chuck E. Cheese lore, there's been an introduction of an array of animatronics, and some of the most creepiest ones I've found while researching for this video were the animatronics known as the Family Album. Oh my god, just look at these. But first, a word from our sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. With hundreds of champions to collect and super in-depth RPG battle systems, Raid has a lot to offer. There's an epic boss in Raid called the Hydra, which has 6 different heads, each one a complete boss battle all on its own. One of them is called the Head of Suffering. It has a lot of effects, but one of the key ones is called the Pain Link, which lets the head share some of the damage it takes with you. If this thing takes too much damage, you'll take damage as well if you're not careful. This can make you die quickly. It's tricky as you'll need to bring some of your best champions if you want to keep all the damage going to the one head, but it's so fun to combat. Next, you have the Head of Blight, which can poison and leech onto your entire team with its poison cloud, making it super hard for your team to land their attacks against the Hydra. You'll want to take this guy out fast, because if you don't, you'll be landing weak hits because of your poisoning. However, he is super weak to fire, so you gotta bring along some HP burn champions with you. For new players, there's the Stag Knight, a skin designed by JonTron. Be sure to use the promo code JTSkin before October 7th to get it. There's a lot of free stuff, including a legendary champion. Check out Sun Wukong, Raid's take on the Monkey King from Chinese mythology. Just log in on 7 different days between now and October 23rd, and you'll be able to get your hands on him for free. There's a lot of cool stuff coming in for Raid. What are you waiting for? Use my link in the description or scan my QR code to get insane bonuses. Right now, you can get the epic champion Drake and other awesome things. Once you're in and crushing your enemies, come find me under the name Zeepsterd. And if you're fast enough, you can join my clan. Hit my link in the description, and thanks for Raid for sponsoring this video. Anyways, the Creepy Family Album, guys. So basically, they were a family animatronic band used temporarily and installed in 3 states that were experiencing animatronic shortages. They had giant black eyes that would stare at you, knowing the exact date and time of your death. And I mean, dude, just why did they make this? Could be worse, could be Uncle Clunk. Yeah, I don't know what Chuck E. Cheese was thinking during the 1970s, but this, as advertised, abomination was definitely gonna scare a bunch of little kids. Buddy, screw you and your weird-ass penis nose. Chuck E. Cheese animatronics ain't even the half of it. Did you know the creator of Chuck E. Cheese was inspired by Walt Disney's animatronics back at the parks? Now when it comes to Disney animatronics, I have some bad memories. Number 1, do you remember being in the Finding Nemo ride when you were a kid? As you would go through on the ride, you would be greeted with various fishes of all sorts and sizes from Finding Nemo, including the anglerfish. It would basically jump scare you in the middle of the ride, and while I was on it, I would close my eyes and try my best to pretend no weird creepy fish was staring right back at me in the dark. And you gotta keep in mind you're completely submerged underwater as well. It was kind of a recipe for a 5-year-old to freak out, I'm not gonna lie. Could be worse. Could be the Yeti on Matterhorn. I'm talking about the original Yeti on Matterhorn back at Disneyland. Listen, I can take the back pain that ride gives you every time you're on it, but when I was a kid and had to see that Yeti, I would shut down, put my fingers in my ears, and pretend that I was not about to die. Some people would say the ride Pirates of the Caribbean would freak them out. I never really got scared about it, but allegedly, one of the creepier aspects of the ride is one of the skeleton heads apparently being real. Okay, so in the past, it's been confirmed that actual real human remains were used during the Pirates of the Caribbean attraction. Of course, over time, much of the remains have been removed and replaced with fake human remains. Thank God, right? But apparently, at the headboard of one of the scenes in the ride, one skeleton has stayed behind that is real, as confirmed by cast members. It's never been confirmed whose bones those are. People have suspected that it is one of a criminal whose body was used for scientific research, or a skeleton of another individual who donated their body for Disney. Okay, as an adult, that is still fairly creepy. But when it comes to Disney, you can go beyond the theme parks when it comes to creepy. In terms of movies, there have been various aspects from their films that have disturbed me when I was a child. I mean, there's the obvious ones, like Oogie Boogie's death scene in Nightmare Before Christmas. You know how when he unravels, he just turns into a bunch of bugs? It's like really gross. Another monster that disturbed me in the same film was the monster who was under the stairs, with fingers that are snakes. Oh, and spiders in their hair. This guy's so weird, I don't like him. Like, I could handle all the other monsters in this movie. You know, you have the clown, the random stupid looking guy with an axe in his head, this weird looking fish guy. But no, when it comes to the guy under the stairs, that's the thing that freaks me out as a kid. You know, it could have been worse when it came to Disney movies. I remember more specifically in the movie James and the Giant Peach, there's a scene in there that really freaked me out. By the end of the movie, we think everything's okay when it comes to our heroes. However, we are caught off guard when a giant rhino comes out, representing all of James's fears and traumas. This same rhino eats James's parents at the beginning of the film, and is the reason why James is an orphan stuck with two crazy aunts. Not only was it disturbing for me to see this rhino as a kid, but also kind of depressing. There are times while watching James and the Giant Peach where things just feel super bleak. The ants threaten James that if he does leave, the rhino will come back and eat him too. You know, when you hear that as a kid, you think, oh shit, this rhino dude is a pretty big deal. I don't want James to be eaten. With being eaten comes death. Which reminds me of other traumatic childhood memories revolving death when it comes to media. In fact, some of the most brutal deaths I've ever seen in media actually involves an air conditioner. I am talking about the film The Brave Little Toaster. I mean, The Brave Little Toaster had a couple really creepy moments. I mean, there was the firefighter clown, also known as Colosso is Crazy. There's a lot of death fake-outs, even some adult jokes in the mix. There was even a cutscene where the Brave Little Toaster sacrifices himself to save his kid. This was in the DVD extras, and I remember looking at this and being incredibly sad. A truly selfless act from the toaster from a movie you wouldn't expect to get this bleak. But by far, one of the most scariest scenes that haunted me and many other children as kids was the air conditioning incident. So the thing about the air conditioner is that he's not really like a terrible guy. He just had some relative anger issues and would call all the other objects stupid. However, when he's insulted for not even really knowing their master, he begins to go haywire, in quite possibly one of the most crazy, unaliving scenes of all time.
I'm not an invalid. I was designed to stick in a wall. I like being stuck in this stupid wall. It's my function!
Just look at him. Shove it up. Gone. The look on his face was enough to imprint on my mind for decades to come. I mean, speaking of things that have been etched into my mind, I must relate to the subject matter of book covers. I mean, we all remember the covers of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. The stories, well, they were scary. The art for the stories? Jesus Christ. Just a weird clown guy on top of a hill smoking a pipe. Nothing to see here. I mean, if you want to get bizarre, we can talk about the Goosebumps covers. I mean, to be fair, they had some funny covers. I mean, the bee one? I mean, this is just so stupid. It's awesome. You have the Goosebumps book Chicken, where it's just about a girl turning into a chicken. Kind of funny. However, when it comes to Goosebumps, probably one of the most iconic covers of all time is that of The Haunted Mask. The Haunted Mask was released in September of 1993. Now, I mention this, well, because anyone after that year will be able to identify this cover fairly easily, as usually this book would be in their elementary school libraries, or even in, say, their first or second grade classrooms. You know, at the time, you're like 6 or 7 years old, so you're pretty susceptible to the creepy stuff. And this, my good friend, was creepy. Could be worse. Could be the Goosebumps episode of the TV show, The Haunted Mask, which, I will admit, did give me a couple nightmares when I was a kid. There's a scene in the Haunted Mask episode where our main character, Carly, is being chased by a bunch of 1990s CGI'd masks, and although it does look cheesy today, back in the day, it was fairly terrifying. For those who didn't know, this episode was a two-parter, serving as the first and second episode of Goosebumps. With the mask on, Carly behaves differently, scaring other children, throwing candy on the ground, and destroys Halloween decorations. The terror here is that the mask ends up becoming part of her skin. Despite many attempts, Carly can't remove the mask until the very end of the episode, only because a symbol of love. She returns home and tosses out the mask, embracing her mother, only for the twist ending of the episode to be that her brother ends up wearing the mask. You see, in this cut of the episode, it just ends on her brother wearing the mask. However, there is a lost version of this episode where Carly apparently does this horrifying scream, but apparently the networks thought it was too freaky to even keep it in. It was seen as a darker ending, and to this day, this version of the episode has been locked in a vault. This would have definitely freaked me out more as a kid, but I will admit, it would have been cooler. What's freakier is that in the book, there is a key detail here in which it is told that the mask can only be removed once, meaning that the mask on her brother could never be removed. A lot of people say that when they were kids, they were really freaked out by the Dummy episode of Goosebumps. Night of the Living Dummy is a cool episode of the show. It never really freaked me out too much, mostly because I already knew about the alternative to Slappy, Chucky the doll. I know, it isn't fair to really compare these two, especially because one of them has actually on film killed people, and the other has just been a dummy, but he does like random hijinks. However, when it comes to horror for children, look nowhere else but Courage the Cowardly Dog. Courage was a terrifying yet still wholesome show, unlike anything before and unlike anything that has come afterwards. So here's the basic premise. Are you ready? There's a house in the middle of nowhere and weird shit happens. But it's much more than that. When you take children's horror and delve deeper into it, you're greeted with frankly one of the greatest TV shows ever made. Premiered on November 12th, 1999, the show was an instant success due to its bizarre nature and just overall weird uniqueness. Here's the thing, with most things on this list, a lot of it used to be scary for me as a kid, but I eventually grew out of it. When it comes to Courage the Cowardly Dog, there's a lot of things on here that still hold up in terms of its creepiness. Of course, one of the most famous episodes is King Ramses' curse. Essentially, an Egyptian stone slab is stolen from the tomb of King Ramses. Courage finds the slab and returns it back home, to which Eustace grabs the slab, depicts it as garbage at first, and tosses it out the window until he finds out on the news that the stolen artifact is worth millions of dollars. That very same evening, King Ramses returns and threatens the family with 3 plagues.
Return the slab.
What?
Return the slab, or suffer my curse.
What's your offer?
This night you will be visited by 3 plagues, each worse than the last. Return the slab.
I mean, what else is there to say but just look at it. It's because of the way he speaks, the way he's animated, how he walks. King Ramses is one of the most terrifying enemies in all of Courage the Cowardly Dog, being one of the few characters on the show animated in CGI. In retrospect, he also is pretty funny. When he doesn't get the slab, he simply says, "Ah, come on." And one of his 3 curses is just an annoying song that repeats itself over and over again. King Ramses is creepy, but when it comes to CGI monsters and Courage, I do believe the Bugle monster is way worse.
You're not perfect.
The Bugle monster is a product of an episode where Courage is constantly pressured to act perfect. At the beginning of the same episode, Eustace buys a bugle that ends up having a crack on it. He tries to play it, but it plays a loud, screeching sound, to which he seeks to repair it. By the end of the entire episode, though, the bugle does return, but in a nightmare form. In Courage's nightmare at the end, the bugle is a blue, skinned figure rendered in CGI, with a weird and disgusting human face and a small mouth. I used to think this was like a fetus when I was a kid. It does not look like an instrument at all, but a monstrosity now that simply states to Courage he's not perfect. The thin limb attached to its body is mimicking the bugle's key. It has a long twisted tube that connects to the creature's head and a horn on its head. When people talk about this episode, they don't talk about anything else afterwards, they just talk about this scene. Despite King Ramses and the bugle, I do believe Courage the Cowardly Dog has various beautiful moments. Courage is obviously known as an anxious dog that is frightened by all. But despite all the foes he faces and all the fear he may have, he does all that he can do to save the ones that he loves. In this case, I believe Courage's main fear isn't a certain enemy, but really being alone. And I'd say the greatest episode of Courage the Cowardly Dog, known as Remembrance of Courage Past, we were given a backstory of Courage, and it is traumatic. In my opinion, courage is a manifestation of the fears a child could have, whether it be a creepy mask, a jump scare, or a certain traumatic incident to happen to a child. Courage's traumatic incident has to do with his parents disappearing when he was just a puppy. The episode starts with Courage noticing a missing dog ad on the back of a milk carton, and where he remembers the traumatic events that led him to where he is today. Courage is left bewildered, not acting like his usual self, which alarms his owners, bringing him to the vet. However, the vet so happens to be the monster that's been causing his suffering. You see, when Courage was a puppy, this same vet kidnapped Courage and his original parents in a twisted scientific experiment of trying to raise animals on the moon and giving them humanistic characteristics. The vet laughs evilly. He knows how much pain he's caused Courage and is there to finish the job. Meanwhile, you're greeted with flashbacks of what happened. These flashbacks both scared me and incredibly saddened me as a kid. The thought of losing parents so young really struck a chord with me. Not that this has ever happened to me, but the thought is real. Courage tries his hardest to free his parents from the rocket, but it's to no avail. He's chased after by the vet and has to escape. As he heads outside, he looks up and sees the rocket head towards space, never to see his parents ever again. He's left there abandoned until Muriel shows up and picks him up and takes him back home. Cutting back to the present, once again Courage's family is threatened again, but this time he saves the day, and instead of him and Muriel and Eustace being the ones being taken to space, it is the vet who is taken back to space and who is finally ridden of, with Courage's parents doing the job of getting rid of the vet. The vet is one of Courage's worst enemies. He's in the two-parter series finale of the show, and I would argue the vet represents Courage overcoming his fears. In that way, I believe this brings us to the greater narrative of this video. These were things that once terrified us as kids. We're no longer as creeped out by this, or even at all, as we were when we were children. In that way, these childhood terrifying memories are just that, memories from when we were kids.
What courage you have. Would you like to come home with me? I'll call you Courage. We'll have a grand time.
Also, by the way, don't forget to use my Raid Shadow Legends link in the description or scan my QR code to get insane bonuses for a bunch of champions.